يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر الكريم.
Good afternoon. You are watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, and these are today's top stories. A man is severely wounded during clashes between Assad residents and the Lebanese army over the implementation of new security measures. Prime Minister Tamam Slam says communication between Hezbollah and the Future movement could solve many of the country's problems and bring an end to the presidential vacuum. And Indonesian authorities believe the missing AirAsia plane is likely at the bottom of the sea. A man was severely wounded when he and other Assad residents briefly clashed with the Lebanese army in the outskirts of the town over new security measures set to go into effect. 2 other people were also injured in the incident as the army dispersed a protest over the decision to require special permits for anyone crossing into the northeastern border town's outskirts. The protesters held their demonstration near an army outpost in Wadi Hamid, where troops fired shots in the air to disperse them. One of the bullets reportedly hit a young protester who was moved to hospital and is in critical condition. Many other protesters were also arrested over physical assault of army troops and a lack of cooperation with the military's commands. Residents also briefly blocked the road between the neighboring village of Labwe and Assal this morning. The families of the captive soldiers and policemen have announced they had promised Prime Minister Tamam Slam to commit to discretion and calm concerning the negotiations for their son's release. The comments came after a delegation from the families met with Marada movement chief MP Sleiman Frangieh, who was quoted as expressing full solidarity with the families and their cause. A spokesperson for the families said Frangieh supported any solution to the crisis, including a swap deal with Islamist prisoners and detainees. At least 25 army soldiers and policemen remain in captivity in the outskirts of Assad since last August, when the army clashes with militants from ISIS and the Nusra Front in the town. Lebanon's government is negotiating a swap deal with ISIS through the mediation of Assad's deputy mayor, Ahmed Fliti. Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi says there is a communication channel open with the Nusra Front, but through informal mediators. For his part, Prime Minister Tamam Slam says Lebanon can only celebrate when its captive servicemen return home safely and a president is elected. Salam was addressing employees at the Grand Sarai during an end-of-the-year reception. After expressing his appreciation for employees' performances, Salam said, "We hope to achieve happy results worth celebrating, results that would relieve the men's families and all the Lebanese people." He reiterated calls to elect a new head of state, pinning hope on the recently launched dialogue between rivals Hezbollah and the Future movement to achieve a breakthrough in the presidential impasse. Describing the Hezbollah-Future dialogue as a great political development, Salam said communication between the 2 main political powers in the country could usher in solutions to many problems, including the presidential vacuum. Ahead of the reception, Salam received U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, Mr. David Hale, visiting Iraqi Vice President Iyad Alawi, and Special UN Representative in Lebanon, Mr. Derek Plumley, who underscored the necessity of dialogue for securing Lebanon's stability. Palestinians plan to submit a final draft of a statehood resolution to the United Nations calling for a peace deal with Israel within a year and an end to occupation of Palestinian territories by the end of 2017. Reports say Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas informed U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry by phone that he will press ahead with the initiative despite Israeli and U.S. opposition. Several European countries had been pushing for a less stringent timeline that might win broader support. The Palestinian Liberation Organization says the draft resolution calls for 2 sovereign, democratic and secure states. And coming up next, South Korea, the U.S. and Japan agree to share information on North Korea's missile and nuclear program. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Indonesia's National Search and Rescue Agency chief says the AirAsia plane that went missing with 162 people on board after takeoff from Indonesia is likely at the bottom of the sea as aircraft and ships are dispatched to search for the jet. The announcement comes amid reports that an Indonesian helicopter searching for the missing airliner saw 2 oily spots in the water. An Australian search plane spotted objects elsewhere in the Java Sea, but it was too early to know whether either sighting was connected to the missing aircraft. Officials say 12 Navy ships, 5 planes, 3 helicopters and a number of warships were searching an area of east and southeast of Indonesia's Belitung Island and nearby waters. Malaysia, Singapore and Australia have joined the search operation. The Malaysian Transport Minister had previously dismissed reports that the wreckage of the missing plane had been found.
As of now, at this time, there are a lot of speculation saying that they found the plane. As of this time, it's not true. As of this time, we are still searching for the plane. This morning, Indonesia Air Traffic Controller lost contact with AirAsia Indonesia flight 8501 at 7:24 a.m. departing from Surabaya to Singapore in Indonesian airspace. Since then, search operations are going on for the missing plane led by Indonesian authority in accordance to International Civil Aviation Organization's convention. Since the state of occurrence and also the state of registry is all Indonesia, so Indonesia is leading the search. In this regard, the Malaysian government has committed and deployed our military asset to assist Indonesia with the search operation. I've been in close contact with my counterparts in Indonesia, His Excellency Ignatius Jonan, and Singapore Minister of Transport, His Excellency Liu Tak Yu, to lend any available assistance in this time of need. We have also established the Rescue Coordination Center at the Kuala Lumpur Air Traffic Control Center in Subang to assist with the coordination effort in searching for QZ8501.
And still in Asia, the South Korean Defense Ministry says a military pact between South Korea, the United States and Japan on sharing and safeguarding sensitive information on North Korea's missile and nuclear program has gone into effect. Under the trilateral pact finalized today, South Korea and Japan will share intelligence via the U.S., which has legally binding bilateral intelligence sharing agreements with each of the Asian countries. A South Korean Defense Ministry official says the 3 countries plan to hold further discussions down the road to fine-tune the scope of intelligence sharing to be allowed under the pact. The Pentagon says the deal will advance the security of the 3 countries. And now for news around the world in brief, the Islamic State has claimed the killing of a senior Iranian officer advising Iraqi forces in their fight against the jihadists. This is according to images posted on jihadist forums. Iran's Revolutionary Guards on Sunday announced the death of Brigadier General Hamid Talabi, who had been training the army and Iraqi volunteers in the city of Samarra, north of Baghdad. In Greece, dozens of fleeing passengers and crew remain trapped on an Italian ferry that caught fire off the Greek island of Corfu, with 478 people on board. Greek authorities say 4 more people were found dead today. The death toll now has gone up to 5, while at least 391 have been rescued so far. A cargo ship with 49 survivors, the first big group to reach land, arrived in Italy's Bari port. And still in the country, Parliament has failed to elect a new president for the country in a 3rd and final round of voting, forcing an earlier general election. Stavros Dimas, former European Commissioner and the coalition government's candidate for the post, fell short of 180 votes of Parliament's 300 seats needed to win. Shortly after the vote, Greek Prime Minister Antonis Samaras said the country would hold the polls on January the 25th. It has been 1 year since 3 Al Jazeera journalists were arrested in Egypt in a case that sparked international outrage. Baher Mohammed, Mohammed Fahmy and Peter Griste were arrested in Cairo on December 29th of 2013 under false charges of aiding the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood and spreading false news. In June, Griste, an Australian, and Fahmy, an Egyptian-Canadian, received 7-year jail terms, while Mohammed, an Egyptian, was sentenced to 10 years. On Thursday, an appeal for the 3 jailed journalists will be heard at Egypt's Court of Cassation. The court will look at the process behind the original trial, a process that Al Jazeera has always maintained was flawed. The court can neither dismiss the entire case, uphold the verdict and the sentence, or order a new trial. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi is able to issue a presidential pardon, but he maintains he will not interfere in the judicial process. The Egyptian government has defended the jailing of the journalists, arguing it was not a political decision and that it is now up to the appeals process to determine what should happen next.
Again, look, he's going okay. He's a tough bugger, but he's had to work on it too. He's determined that this whole experience isn't going to break him. He doesn't want to come out a bitter and twisted man, but it has taken a lot of effort and a lot of self-discipline and determination and focus for him to remain mentally together and also look after himself physically. Obviously a pardon would be an awesome outcome because Peter has done nothing wrong. He doesn't deserve to leave Egypt with conviction. He's completely innocent. We saw no evidence against him presented in court that backed up the claims that were made. So the family would welcome a pardon if that was to occur, and the sooner that happened, the better.
Our 3 journalists in Egypt on prison for a year almost now, for no reason except because they were doing their job. It has been very difficult to deal with the situation because while we were hoping that the legal system would give them justice, it happened exactly the opposite happened. The idea is not about oppressing Al Jazeera, about hurting Al Jazeera only. It's about terrorizing the media so they wouldn't do their job properly. Because if you do your job properly in a place like Egypt, you will be punished. This is what everybody has to understand, and this is why the media, wherever it is, all over the world, and any other institutions or people who want media freedom, they should work together in order to make a stop to the oppression of the media, wherever it is.
We're very concerned about it. In fact, myself as a former journalist, it's something that I feel passionately about. The fact that the Al Jazeera 3 were detained for committing journalism is something that goes against everything that we believe in. We believe in a robust free speech environment, and that's something that's very important for Egypt too, going forward, for their own economy, for foreign investment. So we constantly urge people all around the world, and of course the leadership in Egypt, to preserve and protect that free space environment and the journalists who work there.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. A man is severely wounded during clashes between Assad residents and the Lebanese army over the implementation of new security measures. Prime Minister Tamam Salam says communication between Hezbollah and the Future movement could solve many of the country's problems and bring an end to the presidential vacuum. And Indonesian authorities believe the missing AirAsia plane is likely at the bottom of the sea. Those are your Monday headlines from us here at Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim, wishing you all a very nice evening.
يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر القادمة.